Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And today I'm going to be talking to somebody who is so well known in the magic community. He's been around for a very long time and he's a huge inspiration. A performer, a lecturer, a creator, an innovator, a marketer, a business person. Every single thing that this person has done, he's done incredibly well. I can't wait to interview him. I am, of course, talking about the legend himself, the one and only Mr. Michael Eaton. How you doing, Michael? You all right, mate?
I'm good, man. I've tried to actually fit all that you just said on my business card, and it never worked, you know. So.
Oh, right. But it's true. Like I could literally sit here for ages and list all the things that you do. A lot of the time when I interview somebody on this channel, they have one thing that they are really well known for. So there might be an incredible performer and everyone knows them as a great performer. And we mentioned off camera, you know, anybody who follows you and looks at the videos that you've been putting up, especially recently, I mean, you are just incredible. And we can get into that, obviously. But then you're one of the few magicians that understand about modern marketing techniques. And, you know, obviously you spend a lot of time trying to educate magicians about how to actually market themselves the correct way in this day and age. You've created products, you literally run the gauntlet. There's just not one thing that we can talk about. It's probably going to be like a 7-hour interview because there's so much we can talk about. So
okay, man, I got my team are ready to go. Okay,
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited. But look, for those people who don't know who you are, Michael, before we do anything, let's give them a frame of reference. I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask everybody on Talk Magic. What's your origin story? We know that obviously you do so much now, but how did you get into magic? How did that all happen?
So yeah, and I tell an abbreviated story, you know, a version of the story whenever I'm out at restaurants and people want to know, you know, you do get those occasional guests that want to know, like, hey, sit down, you know, join us and let's talk about it. And so the real truth is that I didn't really start magic until I was probably about 14. And I mean, I had to dabble in it a little bit here and there when I was like 11, 12, but I had a speech impediment also. So like as I was a kid, you know, I didn't really, I had a stutter and I wasn't really socially, you know, connected to a lot of people. And so my father passed away when I was around 15 and my cousin bought me a magic set. It was a Houdini magic kit from Toys R Us. And I remember that kind of got me started into it because I think that was the first time I realized it was profitable because it had a little pull, and I would do the quarter trick where it would go to my pants, you know, and it would just, you know, up the sleeve on the pull. And I'm like, let me just borrow a quarter from somebody. And we were in lunch line, and I'd always borrow a quarter as we were kind of moving through the line to get lunch at school. Sorry, my dogs are here. Sure. And yeah, so as soon as I'd make somebody's quarter disappear, there's like, make my quarter disappear, make my quarter disappear. So everybody wanted their quarters to disappear, which I was fine with because by the time we got to the end of the line, that was my ice cream money, you know. So and so yeah, so that's kind of like where I started. Once I got that bit by that bug, you know, where people were just, how'd you do that, you know? And that's sort of what triggered it. And at that point, I started checking out books at the library at my school. I mean, I think I had the 793.8 down pat because that's our Dewey Decimal System, you know. So every magician watching this that's here, they always, you know, they already know that back in the day it was 793.8. That was the section of the library that you go to when you wanted to check out a magic book. And yeah, so I got into, like, I got the Dunninger book. That was like one of the first ones I got. And I literally tried to go through and make every damn trick in that book. I was trying to find like plastic stemmed wine glasses and cut them off and put a balloon on there so I can make it fill up with water, you know. And I think I went to a magic shop. I was on a youth bowling league, and I remember we used to go to state tournaments in Knoxville. They had a magic shop. So the bus that took us to the bowling tournament when I was in a youth league, it stopped at like a Perkins or like a IHOP or something, and it was right next to a magic shop. And I remember asking my instructor, hey, can we go over here? So we group up the boys, we got to go over there. And that's where I saw my first magic trick really demonstrated. And I had a little bit of money, and I bought like a invisible deck, I think. And I think the rest is pretty much history after that. You know, I caught on to it. And every time I got a chance to go to Knoxville, I would just buy a new trick every time I'd visit the magic shop, you know? So that's how I got into magic.
And what was the goal back then? So you found this magic shop, you've bought your first few magic tricks, you're learning how to do magic. Was it a goal to become a professional magician? Was this something that you thought, you know what, I could make money at this? Or was it just a laugh? You know, where were you back then?
So I think this is one of those common things that I've shared. Most likely you've shared the same story. Everybody watching this is a magician. I don't think we get into it, to be honest with you. I don't think we get into magic to make money. It's always going to be some sort of, 80% of the time, I always say it's like a coping mechanism. You know, we want that gasp, we love the attention, we love the spotlight, and I think that's where a lot of kids at our age, we couldn't get it from playing sports, or we couldn't get it from this, or maybe, some people could, but there's nothing really like it, like whenever you amaze somebody, that feeling that you get as a performer, on the receiving side, there's something very gratifying about that. And I think that the more that happened to me, the more I started really getting into it. And that was my, and let me kind of back up just for a second. I'm going to dive into a little bit more personal storyline that a lot of people don't know. And I think I've never talked about this anywhere else, but my family, I have a history of addiction in my family. So like my dad was an alcoholic, my mom was an alcoholic. A lot of my cousins and stuff, they were all, even my mom was even dependent, on a lot of stuff, antidepressants and stuff like that. And when you grow up, you always get told, hey, you know what, you got a really high chance of becoming an alcoholic. And I think that my goal with magic is that was my escape. That became my addiction, And so that was really, now that I look back on it, years later, I had all the traits of an addict, but it wasn't anything drug related or alcohol. It was magic. I ate it, I slept it, I breathed it, like everything about it. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I think that's really where it took off, and I think I was like 18 maybe, or 19. And I got my first booking. I was working at a magic shop here in Orlando on International Drive. And, and I had a lady that came in, and she was working with a teen ranch. And for those of you that don't know what a teen ranch is, they have troubled teens. It's like a reform academy or reform school. And these kids are, are pretty much the same age as us, a little bit younger. I was 18. I think they were like 15, 16 at the time. I never done the show before. So I just threw out a number. It was like $100 or something like that. And I didn't know what to do. So my manager, he was really cool. His name was Randy. And he was just like, yeah, just take whatever you want, So I just took some magic from the store, and I went home, and I learned everything that I could that night. And that was my first actual paid gig, was at a teen ranch in Maitland, Florida, right outside Orlando here. And it was just kind of cool, the fact that I could make money and I could perform magic at the same time. And then after that, it just became really kind of filling in for magicians here and there, a couple restaurants, a couple guys back in the day, just sort of, they trusted me. They took me in, and they said, hey, you know what? I just need you to be there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's where I went. And I just kind of did one or two things, but I just did them over and over again at the shop, the magic shop. So I'm like, okay, I feel pretty confident I can do this. I just didn't have to sell it. I could just do it. I didn't have to sell it,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started getting into like more of the money making aspect, when it became more of the, exchanging my time for money. So
It's interesting that you say that you work for a magic shop. Do you think that I get so many people on the channel, and they ask me, hey, I'm new into magic. I eventually want to make this a career. How do I go down that route? And one thing that I've realized from speaking to so many people is there's a lot of magicians out there that get their start doing demming in a magic shop of some description, because that gives you a chance to do the same tricks over and over again and get really good at them.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an important thing was that an important part of your development as a magician, working in a magic shop and demming?
Yeah, because it also forces you to, sorry, I'm looking at my dogs. It also forces you to greet people that you never met before. And that's a natural component of what we do as magicians, is that we are meeting people for the very first time at almost every gig. Whenever we go to a gig, it's a new crowd, new faces. And I think that, and the element of selling, also adds some more pressure, because now you have to be likable, in order to sell stuff. You have to be knowledgeable. And so, yeah, I think that working at a magic shop definitely sort of thickens your skin, and also gives you the repetition that you need to perform. I'm not saying it's necessary, but I think it really, really helps prepare you for going out there, because it's basically you're doing a magic show. It's just at the end of it, you're asking for the money, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then but yeah, you're going to get busted at magic shops. You're going to get hecklers, just like you would in the real world, if you don't know what you're doing. So it really kind of allows you to build up a tolerance to it a little bit,
So you're working in a magic shop, you're covering people's gigs, you realize that you can make a bit of money from this. You're kind of doing it semi-professionally. That's kind of what we talk about semi-professionally, aren't we? Doing the odd gig or two here or there, but you still love it as a hobby. It's still fantastic. Is their goal now to become a professional magician? Because I think of you as like the ultimate pro. When did that happen? And also, further to that, not only that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but obviously I alluded to you being incredible when it comes to marketing. Did that come from going to college, or was that self-taught? Is that something that you did as a job, or that transcended over into magic? Like, how did you go from working in a shop at 18 to being where you are now?
Yeah, so I'll get to the marketing part as sort of the part two of this reply. And it was around, I think, 96, 95 or 96, I decided that I moved back to Tennessee. I was helping my mom. My grandmother was sick. And so my mom was living with my grandma, and I was basically living at my mom's, to kind of help cover her mortgage and stuff. And I met a girl, and we wound up basically, my grandmother passed away. I moved to Kentucky. I was in Lexington, Kentucky. And this was 95, 96. And she was in college. And when I moved there, I got a job at O'Charlie's. It was a magic gig. So that was a Sunday brunch. They were paying me like $100 for Sunday brunch. And at that point, I had joined the IBM ring. And so I talked to some people that were also doing restaurants at what's called it's called a Max and Irma's. And that's like Max and Irma's is a chain of restaurants up in the Ohio, Kentucky area. And a couple of them actually, had invited me to watch them, and I'd come over there and I'd watch them perform. So that kind of gave me the drive to really start performing more magic at restaurants. I wanted to get it to do more restaurants. And so I got in with the KM, or the kitchen manager at the O'Charlie's. And then he was the one that sort of started talking to other managers at other restaurants about me. They would come in and see me at Sunday brunch. And then I had one other guy offer me, hey, would you like to come and do it at my restaurant over here? So that he hired me on a Saturday night to go do his restaurant. The brunches, eventually, there was a shift in management. So those brunches stopped. And then I started doing Tuesday nights, believe it or not, in the bar, which to me, now that I look back, I didn't realize it at the time. I'm like, okay, so they see potential for me building revenue in bar sales, and not doing just the brunches, but, kind of saying, hey, let's use this over here so we can make more, because that's where the profits are at in the restaurants or alcohol sales, So they thought, okay, well, this is kind of cool. Let's try this. And I did bar magic basically for a year at an O'Charlie's, where I just it's like this little elevated. Have you ever been to like a restaurant? They have like this little area where the bar is at. You kind of walk up a couple steps, like a Fridays, and have like this whole section. So I just kind of hovered in that area, and occasionally I would walk around the restaurant, but usually it was just in the bar area. So, make a long story short, 2 restaurants soon turned into 3 restaurants that turned into 4 restaurants. And then during the day, I got a job as a wardrobe consultant with Men's Warehouse. So I was selling suits, because I knew that when I started doing these gigs, at these nicer places. And I should mention also, if you've never been to Lexington, they're known for their horse farms, right? So they have a whole bunch of horse farms. So they have Keeneland, which is a really nice racetrack. They do the Rolex event, which is where they have the yearling sales that come in. And I'm talking equestrian everything here. So if anything doesn't ring a bell, jump in and ask me. But these are where they basically, people from around the world will bring their yearling horses, which are they're only a year old. And they'll come off from all over the world, Italy and Norway and everything. And they'll come there for the sale. They have these big auctions for like the horse breeders. And while they're there, they have like the spring meets. And so they'll run like the tracks and the races, and that's where the money's at. And some of these higher up restaurants would bring me in to do a couple, events a week when they'd have these really big, people come in for these sales, like Bob Baffert. And there's a whole bunch of these horse owners and trainers. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars, like for horses. So, so that's where I kind of started cutting my teeth at, and that like more going up a little bit from the casual restaurants to like the finer dining. And then I got on with a couple presidents at some hospitals. They hired me for their events. And then that's kind of where I started really having the omnipresence of being seen, like not only in like the higher end restaurants, but also like these fundraisers and these horse races, and the, the sort of the upper echelon of that area, like I wasn't rich by any means, I was basically living in a small apartment with my girlfriend at the time, but I was so focused on, kind of, this is where I wanted to be. I knew that if I could be in the same circles as all these people that I wanted to hire me, that they would take me seriously, So like I would approach restaurants and they're like, oh no, we never done that before. And these were like really nice restaurants. And then that same manager that I talked to would see me a week later in another restaurant that I was performing at downtown. He's like, I had no idea you worked here, So it was just kind of great, like a little like, like a nice little way to rub it in their face, but I was trying to be professional. But when I sold suits, it was great because my clientele were, people that were wearing suits, businessmen. And I would do some magic while we were, in the middle of a transaction selling the suits. And because I had to do gigs myself, I needed stuff to wear, so this was kind of nice that I could get like a discount on this suit, or I could get these shoes. And it kind of all made sense, like during the day, I'd have this nice job, where I could meet people that I could hand my magic cards to. And then at night when I was performing, I'd get complimented on my tie or my suit. Oh yeah, here's my card for my business. I sell business suits, or so come in and see me. So it's kind of like cross marketing. I was going, everywhere. I was trying to market the magic during the day and then market the suit business during the night, so. And then I just started getting to meet more people, and I met more people, and that led to me meeting more people. And I think by 2000, maybe, I was working 6-7 nights a week doing restaurants, like 2 casual ones and 4 fine dining ones, so.
And at that point, did you stop working at the suit business? Because one question that people ask me all the time is, I'm a semi-professional. I go out and do gigs. I also have a day job. When do I know is the right time to give up the day job?
Yeah. So my personal thing was I liked the day job because it also provided me things that I couldn't get from the magic at the time, which is the benefits, So my girlfriend at the time got pregnant. My son Richard, who you hear in the back, he's 21 now, but he has Downs and autism and special needs. And so there was I had to have that. She was still in college at the time, and she was just starting to graduate, but I was trying to carry a little bit of that load. And the benefits were there, the pay was really good, so I think the magic was one of those things where I, just like everybody else, I'm like, I'm making money with it. Can I hold enough, can I do it well enough to like raise a family, like, can I do it? Do I have enough to make this? Is it safe and secure for me to make the jump into this? And I'm glad I didn't quit my job at the sales place, because I had no idea about marketing. I'm like 99.9% of the magicians that are going to be watching this out there. I love performing. I loved it. I would just pray that I would get a gig, like I hope a gig falls in my lap, like this is, it literally, that's all, a lot of people do. They just think, okay, well, that was fun. Let's pray I get another gig, and they were just hoping and hoping. And I didn't realize that, there are ways that you can create that income. I didn't know about passive income, number one. I didn't also know about like inbound marketing. Everything was outbound. It was push, 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 push. Nothing was magnetic. Nothing was pull marketing. I didn't have any clue about what that was. Around 2002, I knew that as I started getting, I'm like, okay, I'm doing really well organically. You know, I didn't even know what organic meant, but I knew I was getting gigs. And I'm like, but I need to keep getting gigs. So I need to make like a website, and I need to probably learn how to do like design, or I need to pay somebody. I didn't know anything about Photoshop. I didn't know anything about anything like that. And it was around that time I got a gig at a printing place. This company, they do printing for like the college. We have a thing called the SEC. So like in collegiate sports here, the NCAA, they're broken up into like SEC and like Big 10 or Pac-10. And the SEC is like all the southern eastern states, like Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina. So this company, this printing company, supplied like all of the stuff to the SEC, and they hired me for an open house. Sorry, my dogs are trying to play back here. Guys,
hey, don't worry about it. It's all good.
When they brought me in to do that, the art director, I forgot her name now, but I just remember I was on a break. We went in her office, and I'm just like, she was cutting me a check, and I'm like looking around, and she's like, I go, how long you been doing this? And she's like, well, I never went to college. I just learned out off of these books up here. And it blew me away that here she is, an art director, making like, you know, 80, 90 grand a year at this big place, you know, and she never, sorry.
Hey, don't worry about it.
Play in there, kids. So yeah, so she never went to college. She actually got the job just based off of these 5 books that taught her everything about Adobe, like Photoshop and InDesign. And I just was like, I couldn't believe that, you know, she was in this position. So she gave me those books, and she's like, here, take them. She's like, as I told her, I'm like, I need to learn how to do this and this to make my own business cards and to make my own posters. So yeah, so I went home and I read them, and I started tinkering around here and there. Do you know a guy named Jaffo, Jason Fields?
No.
So if you ever go on Penn and Teller, like if you ever look up Jaffo, Jafo, he's my best friend. We've known each other since we were like, I mean, I was like probably like 96, and he was on Penn and Teller. I told the producers, because I couldn't make it, I'm like, you need to get this guy to come on the show. So he went on the show. He's my best friend. He's chimed into a lot of the stuff on Magicians Only and some of those other pages. But yeah, look him up. He's a really, really great guy. He's got some good magic. But I remember he was the one who I always talked to, like, you know, you need to teach me how to do Photoshop, because he was a guru at like Photoshop. So we'd always like hang out, and he's like, okay, so, you know, here's what's called a hotkey. You know, you hold this in, and this is a shortcut. And so I'm like, this is all gibberish to me. But eventually I started learning through these books how to do like one step at a time, right? And then that taught me. So I had like one technique I would do, and I would do it on like everything. I'm like, okay, cool, I can make a business card. And then as I started learning more tricks, I started learning about Scott Kelby and Photoshop. And he had at the time a couple books called Down and Dirty Tricks. It was like Photoshop, Down and Dirty Tricks. And they were like really fun to read. And they would show you little tricks that you could do. So every release, when they would have like CS1, CS2 that would come out. Remember those old ones back in the day? Yeah. So every time he would put a new book out, that would say like Photoshop CS3 Down and Dirty Tricks. And he'd have like the top trending things that people were doing, like companies and marketers were using in their designs. And I would follow it step by step. And it was like reading a magic book, you know, and I could learn how to make this opaque, but then kind of see through. And as I started doing all these, other magicians were taking notice, like my lecture notes covers and stuff. And they're like, hey, who did this? I'm like, I did. And they're like, well, could you do one for me? You know, and they want me to do a business card for them. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, I just do it just out of, you know, I just do it as a friend, you know, I just make something, and then they'd come back and they'd say, hey, can you do a poster for me? And then they'd start to pay me a little bit here and there. So that's kind of how I started getting into doing the design, because as I started creating my own materials, I started becoming more comfortable. I was learning new tricks and tips, you know, and I was teaching myself. And then I started getting on the internet, because they had like Photoshop TV, and then they were doing these podcasts, you know, where they'd like show the screen, and they would show like, here's how you do this. And I would just dive into those until like 4 a.m. watching all these tutorials on how to do you know, like these design stuff. And I'd probably say within a year, man, I became like really, really good at this. And I got a job as a layout person for a magazine. And I stopped doing the sales portion of the job at Men's Warehouse, and I started working, putting this whole magazine together for this guy that hired me as his main layout person. So, and then after that, he gave me a part-time job doing what's called, well, back then we called it spec ads. So we would do spec ads for clients, you know. So it was a free publication. It was all ran off of people that were advertising, right? So, and it was a weekly publication, which means I would have to work with the sales team, and every Tuesday I had a deadline, right? So that really like tightened me up and was trying to teach me how to, like, you know, hit these weekly deadlines. And so that's kind of how I started getting into more of the design, and I was still doing the gigs. They were coming in. I was able to start getting repetitive gigs, which means that I wasn't trying to chase gigs. I was just going back to my existing email list, you know, and saying, hey, you know, I would love to come back again this year. And I think I was doing that a long time before I learned about it. Because as I began listening to Dan Kennedy and all that back, you know, years later, you know, he was like, you know, don't fish up, don't be like a salmon, don't swim upstream, fight the current, just go with it, you know. And that's where he started talking more about your email list. That's where your gold's at, you know, like go back to the email list. And I see magicians do that constantly now, where they're trying to seek new business. And I'm like, why? When you've got an existing line of people that have already paid you, they know, like, and trust you. And if you prompt them to hire you again, you have a higher chance of just rebooking a gig for the same people, you know? So why are you going to make this harder on you when you can make it so much easier, you know? And I didn't know that back, you know, in 2003, 2004. But I started doing that. I was just trying to go back to people year after year, you know. And the three places, and I talk about this in one of my courses. I say the three biggest places that I got a lot of holiday bookings at were hospitals, banks, and car dealerships. Those are the three main places where a lot of my gigs came from, because car dealerships have a ton of salesmen at them. They have a marketing team, all that stuff, and they like to drink, you know. So like they like to have fun. Hang on, I'm so sorry, Craig.
Don't worry about it, Michael.
So
hey, I've got 2 dogs. I know exactly what it's like.
So yeah, so like and then the hospitals, they have different departments, right? So if radiology hire me for an event, you know, next thing you know, anesthesia, they're talking about, you know, they had a magician this guy was telling me about. So then I would just go to that department and say, yeah, Bob over here hired me last year, you know, would you like to have it this year? And so they would hire me, and multiple departments would hire me. So they had like their whole surgery department that would have their Christmas gig, and then their whole, this like the whole this department, you know. So there was like 10 or 20 or 30 of these different departments in the hospitals, accounting, human resources. All these have their own separate events. So that was a really good, you know, stream of income during the holidays, was hitting those. And of course banks, because they're banks, you know, like they would have the Christmas parties as well. So that's where I really started focusing on. I would just pick up the phone and I would get a little Excel spreadsheet ready to go on my computer, and I would just call them up, and all I would do is I would say, hey, can you put me in charge of the person who's booking entertainment for this year's holiday party? Yep, perfect. Hold on just a second. That's Barbara. She's over in personnel. Give me 1 second. I'll put you on hold. No problem. So while I'm on hold, I'm just like, Barbara, personnel. You know, I'm just typing this out. And then Barbara would get on. I'm like, hey, Barbara, this is Michael. I'm a performer here in town. I'm a magician. I specialize in this, this, and this. And all I'm doing is I'm just looking to try to contact people that are booking entertainment for this year's Christmas party. Are you guys doing the Christmas party? She's like, yes, we are. And I'd say, great. Can I just send you some information on who I am? Yeah, sure. Come on. And send it over. I wasn't trying to sell anything. And so what I would do is I would just type in her name and her email and her phone number and then her address. And what I was doing was, when I was working those 6 restaurants I was telling you about, is part of my pay was I would get like $125, and then I would ask for a $25 gift card from these restaurants, right? So I wasn't spending those gift cards. I was saving them. And then on every one of those cover letters that I would send out to those places I was just telling you about, hospitals, banks, and car dealerships, I'd staple a $25 gift card onto that cover letter, and I'd say, hey, Barbara, thanks for spending a few minutes on the phone with me. I'd love to invite you and your spouse out to dinner one night. This is on me. Here's a $25 gift card.
Wow.
Yeah. So what was happening is that I was inviting them to come out and see me, but to them, it looked like I was giving them $25. And that $25 gift card, I wasn't spending anything on it. It was just part of my salary. Right. And so it was like it wasn't even really my salary. I was getting paid already. They were just including a gift card for me to eat on, but I chose not to eat on that. And I chose to give that away in order to get a gig that would pay me 10 times, or not 10 times, but 5 times the amount of what I was making at a restaurant. You see what I'm saying? So
that's so smart. That's
so
clever.
So I had a lot of people that were coming in. I'm like, just make sure you ask for me, whenever you get there. And so they would come in. Usually the manager or the hostess would say, hey, how many over here to see the magician, Michael? And so next thing you know, this is now where people are starting to hear it in the management, like people are coming in to see me. They didn't know that I had the gift card that I was giving away, right? They didn't even care. It was just mine. But it was just the fact that, number one, they were coming in to see me. So that let them know, hey, we got people all the time that are showing up, at this time. So, and so that's kind of how I booked a lot of restaurant gigs. I mean, not restaurant gigs, holiday parties, by leveraging the restaurants with that. And that was like the audition. So when they would come in to have dinner and they would use the gift card, that was like my in-house audition for that person that was booking the entertainment.
It's a win-win, because you look great to the restaurants, but then you're going to get the gig anyway, because they're coming to see you.
Right.
You've given this really nice gesture. They're already sold on you before they even get there. Like, that's so.
Yeah. Just building that massive wow factor, and so that's and it's perceived value, like the gift card didn't cost me a cent, but the perceived value is that I just went out of my way to give them $25 worth of great food and wine, if they want to come in and see it. So, and $25 at a restaurant I was performing isn't a lot, but it's the gesture, that's what's being taken into consideration.
Oh, exactly. And then once you've got them as a client, they're going to come back again and again and again.
Right.
But the thing is, and I get so many magicians ask me the question, how can I get more gigs? And the thing is, what you just described there is what most magicians don't want to do, which is you need to put some effort in. You're there doing some cold calling, ringing up companies, creating yourself a spreadsheet. You're putting the work in, and it takes time and effort, not necessarily money, but that sort of thing takes time and effort. And that's why a lot of magicians don't really get the gigs that they want to get, because they're waiting for the phone to ring and they don't want to go and be proactive and make it ring instead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And, and I'll touch on a topic, and I think it's going to be very sensitive to a lot of people watching this. And that is, the support, the support from your family, the support from your spouse. Okay. Yeah. So the support basically is the most important thing, because a lot of guys don't have the support from their families. So like my sisters never believed that I could actually make a living doing magic, but they didn't realize, they were like, can't you just get a real job? But they didn't realize is that the beginning part of the day up until the night, that was my job. It was, I'm like, what do you think, the gigs just appear, like by magic? No, I'm on the phone, I'm on the computer, I'm doing emails, I'm sending out proposals. Like, that is my job. The magic is the reward, I said, so what I'm doing during the day, when you want me to have a real job, that's where I'm doing all my business administrative stuff, like at home. And the gig is what happens the last 2 or 3 hours at the end of every day. That's the payoff, so this is where my work is at, and this is where the payoff is at. And so they just looked at it like, these gigs just appeared, and that's completely 180 degrees from the truth. It's not even near the truth. And that's what they don't realize. And I think that it's important that the spouses, the family people, they understand, like, this is a business. You register your business, you have a tax ID number, you have this, you have everything in place. You are viewed as a business, so that's the first thing that you have to let them know is that, I'm actually creating a business out of this. This isn't just for fun. This is going to pay our bills or a mortgage. We're going to, put a certain amount of this aside to have for retirement and all this other stuff, so they don't look at that. And I think more magicians need to have those discussions with their families and their spouses about, if they're going to make the decision to go into a full-time position doing entertainment, that the transparency issue has to be there. They have to open up and say, okay, let me get your feedback on, what do you think about me going full time? And then just have that conversation, and be ready just to listen to what they say, because the more you can overcome with objections, the more you can educate those people and let them know, like, this is totally possible. And here's my business plan, and I don't think a lot of guys even have that. They don't even have like a 2-year, a 5-year plan. Like, what's their exit strategy? What's your goals? Who's your niche? How are you going to market? What's your marketing plan? And so these guys, I shouldn't say guys, these people go out there and they chase the passion so much, and then they get a booking from it and they make money and they're like, okay, I can do this full time, but they don't have a plan of action. And I think that's the most self-destructive part of the entertainment business, is that they're going after that bright, shiny light, but they don't see everything else that has to be taken into consideration. Like, there's going to be a point to where, you're going to hit a wall and you're not going to know what to do because you didn't plan, so you have to be able to understand this is a business and here's the steps you have to take. And then you have to share those with the people that you love that are going to be there behind you, so.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the biggest advice I can give, because I don't think a lot of people take it seriously.
Well, one thing that I've noticed about you, and you mentioned, you briefly mentioned this earlier on, but I see you doing this, is you have multiple income streams from magic, multiple income streams. So I know that, and we'll talk about this, but you've created magic, which brings you an income. You lecture, you work producing content for other magicians, whether from a design point of view, a website point of view. You get gigs externally, but you also have a lot of restaurants. And I think that's really important. I remember when I first started as a full-time pro, and I really kind of nailed the restaurant market. And I was doing like probably 8 restaurants a week. And it was all for this one company. And I got myself into the head office, and I was working different venues, all in the different area. And then one day the area manager changed and everything went overnight. And I was going from doing like 7 or 8 gigs a week to nothing. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to do? And I had nothing else there. And that can be a major problem. And it's something that I see that you have really kind of worked hard on, having all these different income streams.
Yeah.
How important is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's used to earned income, and earned income gives you what you need, obviously, but you also have to trade off your time for that. So one of my dear friends, Tim, and he was like the guy that taught me more about, Dan Kennedy and Joe Bauer and, Tim Ferriss, all those guys in the marketing, and, you know those guys. A lot of people listening probably know those guys, but like, they're the ones who are always preaching this. And he told me, he's like, the earned income is, that's good, but you need the passive. The passive is you trade your time for money. And he said, time is money. You can waste it, you can spend it, or you can invest it, right? And so that's exactly the way I look at it, is that whenever you're a magician, or whether you work a 9-to-5 job, you're basically trading your hours in your life for a salary. And the passive income model is where you create it and then you set it free, and then it generates the income for you without having to, I don't want to say set it and forget it, because it's not a forget it, because you're constantly tweaking little things here and there to kind of add more value to that, right? So even courses, if you look at like a course, somebody may put a course together, and course creation is just one aspect of a passive income, where you can put a course together and you can sell it because it's all pre-recorded, it's already done. It's like a book, you write a book and then you set it out there, then that book will sell. infinitely, as long as there's a market for it, right? Or it's providing value to someone's life. And so that income that's coming in off of that is, what you're not having to worry about. It's in the background, it's coming in. And then maybe every 6 months or so, you may put together an addition to that course. So you might say, hey, there's 8 more things that I really want to add to this. And because you learn new stuff constantly, right? So you're like, man, this would be great for the course. Let me go ahead and put this in. So then you do like 6 more modules or another lesson. And then you add that into the back end of that course. And then you go out to your email list again. You say, hey guys, I just put a brand new 6 modules in the back end. Happy birthday, like enjoy it. And those people appreciate that, right? So those people that have already paid for the course will love that. And that gives you also another opportunity to go out there and sell that course more, because you've already added more content to it. So definitely I think it's in people's best interest. And we could probably do a whole other video conversation about passive income, but I would definitely encourage people out there that are watching to consider putting at least one passive income model together, whether it is educational or something that could help people, a product, something that could get you residual sales over and over again. And it's funny, and I'm sure you're probably the same way, Craig, like whenever I'm scrolling through at 2 a.m. when I'm in bed through my Facebook feed, I'll see somebody talk about, and maybe in a reel, they'll do a Facebook reel, and they're like, make $1,000 a month, with no work. Click the link and watch. And it's the tripwire, it's people want to get you into that. And I just look at the comments. I love watching comments because people are just such negative mindset. They're in a place where they were taught their entire life that this is the only way that you can make money. And it's because it's a generational thing, right? My parents never would have said, create a course. They would have said, work hard, go to work, come home, go to work, come home, do that for 65 years, and then enjoy 10 and you're dead, So, and that was the generation before us. And I'll be 50 next year, so that was my parents. Fortunately, we are now in an area where more parents are understanding what passive income is, and they're encouraging their children, to go more passive than more earned. And I'm always encouraging my kids, what could we do? I'm trying to teach my son Nolan, he's 8, like, he wants to do game design. He wants to get into like coding, right? And I'm like, oh, this is perfect, so we get him enrolled in these like coding courses. They have Code Ninjas, which is like, they do it for kids, and he's learning how to do Scratch, and stuff like that, like writing, like building these little games. And that's kind of like what I want him to learn. I want him to be able to make money doing something he really loves and is passionate about, but he can also create courses on, so he can set up some passive income for him, down the road. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. It's great to see. And here's a question. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. You're one of the leading experts, in my opinion, when it comes to restaurant magic. And a lot of you don't get it these days, but I remember back in the day, the magic menu, there was so much stuff out there for restaurant magicians back in the day. You don't see it as much these days.
Man. Jim Siskey. So good, man.
Best magic magazine ever. The magic menu, just brilliant.
I love it.
But you don't see it being talked about as much these days. But for me, working in restaurants is a huge way to A, get flight time and get good at what you do, but then B, create really good income for yourself while you're building up the other aspect of lead generation and gig inquiries and so on and so forth. And I know you've got some very interesting thoughts about generating restaurant work, but more importantly, keeping the restaurants once you've got them. Can you go through something like that? Yeah, you don't have to spend forever on it, but I mean, I genuinely think you're like the leading expert when it comes to this. So I'd love to chat to you about it.
You're talking about the tracking system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I could do a whole video just on restaurants, because people, and when I say people, magicians, they all have like this tunnel vision when it comes to restaurants. It's like, okay, I need a place I'm gonna perform at this place, and then they go in and they try to as Dan Kennedy says, it's called show up and throw up. You know, they try to, they show up and they throw up, which means they just try to go in and impress the manager without a meeting. They just try to cold it, you know, go in and sell it. You may hit a bullseye once in a while, but you're like the 1% of people that do that. So that's the thing I try to, you know, in the things I talk about people that want to do restaurants is that you have to separate the magician from the business owner, right? So when you walk into a restaurant, you cannot think like a magician anymore. You have to think like a restaurant person. And that means that you have to become familiar with those terms on and how a restaurant is ran. Because the moment you try to put yourself, you know, in the shoes of a magician, you don't understand what it takes to, you know, to do this job. You know, restaurants are fierce. They're competitive, number one. They have shit margins. They have absolutely horrible margins, you know, so they depend on volume. And you're talking about, like, you know, you have to crank out, you know, 200-300 covers a night to actually profit sometimes on these restaurants. And so thinking that you can go in, and the worst thing, what makes my skin crawl whenever I hear it, is when magicians approach a restaurant and say, I can increase your business by 20%. You have no fucking clue. You know, you don't understand, you know, like you cannot make that promise or that guarantee and expect to stay on very long, because the moment you can't prove that, number one, is you become a liar. You become looked at. And so I say, if you're going to go do it at a restaurant, never, ever, ever make an empty promise that you can increase any business on a given night, because you're a flat out fucking liar. Okay. So I apologize for my language.
No, it's true.
But it's true, you know? And so I got into it years ago on the Magic Cafe. Some guy was like, well, yeah, I mean, I know that I'm increasing business there. I'm like, how do you know? He's like, well, the nights that I'm there, it's a lot busier. And I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm like, there could be a baseball game down the street. There could be a match, you know, down here. And there could be a meeting or a convention 2 miles down the road. And the first thing they did was, hey, let's go out to eat. So there could be a number of reasons why people are in that restaurant. And unless you can literally show a report that says the magic is the reason, then you can't sit there and say it's you, you know? And so after a few years, you know, I figured this whole thing out, and I put together this system, and I'm not going to pitch it here. If people want to know about it, they can hit me up. But basically, it's in short, it's a way to show proof of the money that the magic is bringing in to the restaurant on a weekly or a monthly basis. And I try not to ever tell people they need it. Not everybody does need it. I look at it as like an insurance policy. If you have it, you have a bullet now in your gun that you can use if needed, right? To shoot out there. If somebody says, hey, the magic's not working, we're gonna have to cut back, we're gonna have to let you go. That's when I come in and I use the system to say, hey, listen, I tell you what, I've got a system, if we can try it for the next 6 weeks to 8 weeks, that hopefully will show you that the magic is working, and I can prove it to you. Would you be willing to go ahead and can we do this? And that's whenever I put that into play as sort of my last resort. That's like my card and my ace in the hole, you know, just in case I need it, that I can put it out there. But yes, that is a very, very important issue to discuss when it comes to restaurants, is that another thing I hear is that if you're charging $100, let's say, and I had the same mindset, I think everybody does, if I can just get 4 people at a table to spend $25 each, I'll make my fee, right? And that's not right. They have to make 3 to 4 times the amount that they're paying you to actually cover, because magicians don't think about operational costs. They don't think about food costs. They don't think about labor. They don't think about advertising. Every single aspect of spending has to come in and be accounted for at a restaurant. And in order, if a restaurant spends 100, they have to recoup 400 almost, you know, at least 300 to break even, and then 400 to profit off of that idea, right? So you have to sell $400 worth of food if you're getting paid $100 a night. And I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people, magicians, don't take into account whenever they approach a restaurant. Is the moment you try to sell yourself, you better be ready to back those numbers up, you know?
Yeah.
So, and they don't think about that. It's all about, here's what I can do for you. Here's what's valuable They don't talk about the restaurant. And I'll tell you, the ones that I've always sat down and talked to the managers about, Craig, I always say, tell me about your business. Because if I can shut up and I can listen to this GM tell me every aspect of his business, what check times are on Fridays, what check times are on Saturdays, what's the wait time, how many covers does he have on Thursday, I can now push an option for him to choose from. Now I can say, hey, here's exactly how I can help you, right? And he's just giving me everything. I didn't have to tell him anything about me. I'm asking him questions. I'm interviewing him. He's not interviewing me, right? Yeah. And so this is what you need to do. You need to basically extract the information from them and find out what their weaknesses are. Where are they weak at? Where are they strong at? And the two ways that obviously this as well as I do is that you can either help them when it's busy, or you can help them when it's slow. I don't ever try to say we can build up, we can get to a certain percentage of sales. But if they do say that, like Thursdays, right? When I approached the place here, they weren't doing anything on Thursdays. Anytime you see an opportunity there, don't just go, hey, what do you think about doing magic? Give it a theme, right? So I say, what if we did a family fun night? And so the family fun night is awesome because it's not kids night. Kids night seems amateurish, but a family fun night sounds more involved, right? The whole family is more involved. So I don't like hearing kids nights because that just kind of makes it sound, only the kids are going to like it. But we both know the adults get just as much enjoyment from the magic as the kids do. So that's why I always say family fun night. So if I see that a restaurant is not doing anything on an empty night, they don't have a theme, I'll pitch it and just say, hey, let's do a family fun night, And then I have all these different screenshots from people that have left reviews on my restaurants on family fun nights that say, this is an amazing concept, or we loved it and we're going to come back. I can use all those screenshots from Google, from Yelp as case studies, basically. And I can take that information to the manager and say, hey, this is what we're actually getting in reviews from other places right now that I'm at. And here's what people are saying around town about this. So they just need to look at those reviews and say, well, it looks great. Let's give it a shot. I always go in with the mindset to managers. I say, I'm going to walk out of here and two things are going to happen. We're either going to shake hands and we're going to have a deal, or I'm still going to stay here. We're going to shake hands and say, well, it may not work. I'm still going to enjoy food here and bring my family here, so it's a win-win either way. But I always, I feel more confident now, though, that I have all these things that I'm bringing into the meeting, though. I've got the screenshots and I've got the pitch on the family fun night. And so that's usually what works for me as far as getting gigs at restaurants, but never empty promises, though, that you can raise their sales. It will happen eventually. And I try to tell managers that, like, it's not going to be an overnight success, like this is going to take some time, word's got to spread. And they all know that. They know it usually takes about 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, to kind of get the word out. And the social media now, it's great because that's more added value, that you can push on your end to kind of help promote it. Yeah. So one of the tips I was going to tell the magicians that are watching this right now is that Facebook and Instagram, they have this massive power, especially with local places, right? So what I do is I go into these groups that are local. So like I live in Apopka, Florida, and we have a Facebook page called Apopka Rants, Raves, and Reviews, which is where people can leave like feedback on businesses that they've done, that they went to, like restaurants or bars or even car dealerships, whatever. And so what I try to do is I can't advertise in there, right? I can't say, hire me for this because that's against the rules. But what I do is I have a graphic of people like amazing, like they have an amazing look, and it says tag your favorite restaurant. And then I put a post in there and I say, hey guys, my name's Michael Eaton. I live here in Apopka. I'm a magician. And I just happen to have a Friday night open up. I do a lot of restaurants. I perform at a couple places around here. I'm very careful not to say where I perform because that can come off as promotional. And so I just say I perform at a few restaurants around the area. I've had a Friday night open up and I'm looking for feedback from the community. I'm looking for a bar or a restaurant that I can perform at. So if you think that a good spot that would fit what I do, please tag it here. right? And I just kind of and I kind of do like a little a little thing about here's what I'll give them a recap of like a one paragraph, like here's who my audiences are and here's what I've done before. I've been the magician for the magic. I've done this. I've done that. Da, 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 da. And I say tag your favorite place that you think you'd like to see this at. And now when they start tagging everybody, you know, in those groups, not only does the management see it, you know, if they're a part of that group, but now that gives me ammo to go to those places now and approach them and say, hey, here's who I am. I just did a little trivia thing, or not a trivia, but like a question, a poll in this group over here in Apopka. And apparently you're like the best match that we could work out, you know, like they wanted me to come to you guys and talk to you. So I'm kind of leveraging the community as my as my reason for being in front of that restaurant.
That is brilliant. That is absolute. I've never heard of that before, but that's such a smart way to do things. That's clever.
It's completely free. You know, you're just going to the community and saying, because there's like 23,000 people in this community page. And so, yeah, it's just like, hey, here's what I do. And this is kind of what I like to have fun with. And the last one I just did on another page, I actually was able to put a little clip of, you've probably seen recently, some of the videos that the customers are recording, and they'll airdrop it to me. And I share that in those, and I say, hey, here's my style of magic, and this is what I do. And then, you know, tag a restaurant you think you'd like to see this at. And so that way, and I can use the video as sort of, you know, to showcase like what my talents are.
And we mentioned at the very beginning of the interview, those videos that you've been doing are phenomenal. Like they are so good. And it's you know, it's another example of using technology to grow your business. In this case, you know, you're getting people to airdrop these videos over to you, and then you can use them on social media. You can use them everywhere. I mean, that's so smart, Michael. It really is.
Yeah, and it wasn't even really my idea. It was, it's just, I'm sure people that are watching have had that happen before, where they're just like in the middle of, they're starting to do a routine at a restaurant or a gig, and somebody goes, hey, can I record you? And I'm like, at first I used to go, oh no, please don't record me. And I'm like, yes, please record me. Because now phones are at a point where the quality are really, really good on them. You know, like these things are shooting 4K now, you know, so you can get really good quality now on these phones. And if you have an iPhone, they have a feature called AirDrop, which means that if somebody else is shooting on their iPhone, they can literally send you a 5-minute video in less than 10-20 seconds through AirDrop. It's crazy alien technology. I have no idea how it works, but yeah, they can just go boop and they just shoot it right to your phone. And so anytime I see somebody now that pulls out their phone, they want to record it, I'm like, hell yes, record me. Let's have some fun. And then I just really have as most fun as I can with these people. I want to get the most laughs. It's all being recorded. And at the end of it, I just go, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you mind to go ahead and just shoot that over to my phone real quick? And then they just go, yeah, no problem. They just go right to AirDrop and they shoot it to me in less than 10 seconds. It's on my phone. And I even do that. And instead of taking tips, you know, I like to, if you want to tip me, just give me a copy of that, you know? So,
that's correct, because that's more valuable at the end of the day.
It is more valuable. I'm gonna book way more business off the video than I will a $5 tip, you know?
Absolutely. Well, talking about those videos, and if people haven't seen them, you post them on your own timeline and also into various different Facebook groups like Magicians Only and so on and so forth. It's well worth checking out. One thing I've learned from watching those is how incredible you are as a performer. And not just in terms of your sleight of hand, but in terms of engaging an audience of all ages. And you tend to find that not everybody, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but I've seen so many videos of magicians where it's very dry and they're just doing sleight of hand and they're just going through the motions and they're not engaging the audience. And, you know, they're kind of, if there's kids there, they completely ignore the kids or the other way around. And the reason I bring that up, is there any advice that you can give people just briefly on how to perform and get really good reactions? Because it's one thing getting a video, but if the video makes you look like a piece of crap, you're not going to be able to use it anywhere. So how do you engage an audience who you've never met before? You've walked over to their table, they don't know you for Adam. 5 seconds later, you're laughing with them like they're your old friends, and it's incredible to watch you do that, Michael.
Well, it's just building rapport, you know, like that's the thing. I can teach anybody a magic trick, but I can't teach people how to be likable. You know, that's just something that you have to have. You have to have a true love for people. You know, that's where it comes in at. You know, if you're one of those people who just, you can't stand to be around people, or you're too nervous around people, I'm not going to say you can't learn to do certain techniques, but you genuinely have to be just somebody that, you know, is a conversationalist, you know, that you don't mind to go out there and be around people, you know. And there's a lot of things that I think we need to kind of have talks with ourselves before we decide to do magic for money. And that's one of them. You know, am I truly comfortable in front of strangers, and do I have a likable personality enough that I can just talk to anybody, you know? And so that's where, if you don't, I would encourage you to like look into things like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And, you know, there's certain things that you can read about how to become interesting and likable and, you know, and desirable. But yeah, I think it starts with knowing just how to build a rapport, you know, and how to walk up to people and break that ice where it's not threatening, it's low key, it's fun. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but I've got, give me 2 seconds. It's totally worth it. I'm not going to go to Frank hopefully too long. But the best $4 I've ever spent in my entire life was on this right here. If you guys can see this.
Magic Mike. No, not that one.
That's my name tag. So I wear that when I perform, and when I walk up to a table, sometimes I don't have to say anything. I just go up and say, "Hey guys, everything going okay tonight? Service is good." And by that time, people have already they're like looking at my name tag, and they just start busting out laughing, right? So this thing is like my icebreaker without me having to even say a word. They just read that, they just start giggling. They're just like, they're already into it right now, you know? So that's my icebreaker. But yeah, when I walk up to a table, the first assumption is I'm a manager, right? And so therefore, I've already won the respect of their time when I walk up to the table, because they assume I'm a manager, right? And so I'm going to use that to my advantage. I don't want to say anything about me being a magician. I just want to say, "Hey, how was everything? Service was good? Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was wonderful. And how was the food? Excellent. It's great. Awesome. And how about the entertainment?" And they just kind of like look at each other like, and I go, so I just kind of like point to my name tag and go, "That's me." And 8 out of 10 guys or girls will say, "Oh, we're gonna get a dance," or, you know, because they think Magic Mike, you know. And I'm like, no, that's the 10 o'clock show. You know, you're safe. And so that kind of gets a laugh. And so what I'm doing is I'm just building up this little bit of rapport beforehand, you know, or if I can say, "How was the food? How was the service?" Up to this point, I'm still a manager to them. And that's whenever I kind of, you know, have this little bit of like maybe 10, 20 seconds of build up time before I even say I'm the entertainment. And then I also do something where I kind of try to make sure I encompass everything. I say, "Hey guys, my name is Michael. My friends here call me Magic Mike." Not that one. And I look at the lady, not that one. You know, like, don't get your hopes up. And I say, "I'm actually I am the featured entertainment here on Saturdays from 7 to 9. Yes, they pay me to blow your minds." And I say, "And you look like a pretty fun table, except for you." And I just kind of like, I do it as like a tongue in cheek, you know, to the guy at the table, and everybody around them's like going, they're like, "Oh, you know him," you know, so that's the guy, that's the one you want to get. And so that's where I just kind of have that little banter with them, you know, where I say, I've already told them exactly who I am. I've told them that I'm paid for my time. There's no need in having to tip me, you know? And so at that point, it's really it's kind of sold at that point, where I say it's a little gift that we give everybody here at the restaurant for coming in, and the owner wanted me to come over and say hi to you and amaze you. So can we have some fun, you know? So, and then I just kind of go into it at that point. So, but yeah, it's that first 10, 20 seconds of just having fun with them and just letting them know who you are and that you're already taken care of. This is a treat from us to you guys for coming in. And I'd love to share something kind of fun with you. So, yeah.
You know, and that's incredible advice on the approach. It really is. And I think it's important that as magicians, we constantly evaluate. Just because something worked 50 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work now. I still see, and I went out to a restaurant with my family about a month ago, and there was a magician, didn't know who I was, didn't realize I was into magic or anything. And he came over and he went, I swear to God, I couldn't believe I saw this. He came over and he went, have you dropped this red penknife? No, how about this black one? which for me was great like 20 years ago, but I think you need to constantly be looking at how to improve, because that stuff's just not going to work now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's better ways to do things.
I tried that with a 20 one time. I was like, hey, did you guys drop a 20? Because I was going to do the floating bill, you know? And I'm like, did you drop a 20? And the lady's like, yes, I did. Thank you. I'm like, oops, okay. That doesn't work. So yeah, that was the best one. So, hey, my wife said she's going to be here in like 10 minutes. So if you have any more questions, let me go ahead and get those out of the way real quick.
Let me ask one more question before, well, two questions to finish off. The first question, what made you go into creating magic? Because you released, and we haven't even talked about this, but you released so much great material, and people can look it up on various different magic sites and so on and so forth. What made you do that? What was the reasoning behind that? Because you didn't need to. We've talked about how successful you are as a marketer and as a magician.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go into creativity and creating magic tricks and lecturing and that sort of stuff?
You want the truth?
Yeah.
We were trying to buy a house. I mean, yeah. I was. I'll be honest with you. I could have released a lot more magic way early on, but for me, and this is kind of funny. I just watched Top Gun Maverick. Have you seen it yet?
No, my wife did, but I haven't. She went without me.
Really, really good. But Tom Cruise kind of said the same thing. He said, I wanted to wait until the time was right and the technology improved. And I had this thing of like, I had this idea, like I did some lecturing, you know, I lectured for magicians, you know, in the 90s and up to the 2000s and stuff. But I just wasn't really happy, to be honest with you, with like a lot of it had a lot to do with everything from technology to just the magic community in general, man. Like I'm very, very selective about the people that I associate with in magic, just because I was the guy. I was the guy at the conventions, the move monkey. I was the guy that was staying up till 4 a.m. and, you know, and trying to fool everybody and doing the magic club meetings and all that. And there was just it was a pissing contest. You know, there was nothing constructive, with the exception of a very few people that I hung out with, that I really got any. I didn't learn hardly any. I learned lines. I learned some good, funny lines. But when it came to actually sitting down, I'm maybe 5 people in a 20-year span that I really looked up to in magic, and that was about it, you know? And so I'll be honest, I didn't pay for lectures. I didn't go to lectures, you know? I went to a convention, but I didn't register because I want my value. I want my money's worth, you know? And so, and I hate to say that and admit that to this day. Did I pay for lectures and conventions? Yeah, I've done that before. But I would say 80% of the conventions that I went to were just, you know, within a few hours drive, and I would go there, and I just didn't really see the point in paying. I know people are going to probably hate me for this when they see it, but I just, if I'm going to go to a convention, I want there to be a reason to pay. I want there to be a reason to sign up. I want there to be a reason that I'm going to get my money's worth. And if there's a convention and one day I see a lineup, I'll go to the people and say, hey, can I buy a 1-day registration? I believe in this one day that I'm going to get the value for my money, you know? Yeah. But for the other parts, I didn't do anything. I just hung out in the bar with the magicians, you know? Yeah. I hung out in the lounge, and that's all I did. I just literally, the reason I would go to conventions, Craig, is just so I could have a reason to see my friends that I haven't seen in 3 years. Yeah. You know, and that was it. I just went to say hi to my friends that I haven't seen in 3 years. That was the only time that we could ever see each other. Everybody'd fly in, and they were there, and I'd go give hugs, and I'd give, how you doing? How are the kids? And let me see you, you know, I'll show you this new thing I'm working on. And that was it. I didn't go to the lectures. I didn't go to anything like that. So that's one of those things that it just kind of slowly decreased. And when I met Coach Kim Litt, and that's a whole other story for another day, but we worked together for a number of years, and he was great. He still is a great guy. There was so much stuff I saw in the magic community, that people just were blind to. My eyes became more opened as I started doing more gigs with Koshti and stuff, and I thought to myself, okay, well, I've got enough material that I could probably do a project, but I wasn't really happy with some of the stuff that, like the politics of, like some of the things and all that. So I think it was right around 2010 that, now she's my wife, but we were talking about getting a place, and I was 5 minutes away from the Magic Estate, which is where Jeff Kaler and Anton James and all these guys, Robert Moreland, they all lived at. And if you've never been to the Magic Estate, it's this huge this house, and they had 18 rooms or whatever. It's like Wayne Manor, and they all chipped in and they rented it. But it was cool because they made it like this whole magic community thing. And that's where I talked to Jeff, and I love Jeff, man. Jeff was like, he took on, he was like, you want to do a DVD? And his name was Gold. He was doing this stuff with Amar and TKO and all that stuff, and anything he touched was like, it was like turning to gold. So Jeff was just like, he saw what I was, and I needed to make some money, and so he's like, hey, look, I've got a whole production facility. Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we took it on, and he was cool. He was so cool, man. He was just like, yeah, if you need me, I'll help you. And I didn't have a lot of people that were like that at the time.
Yeah.
So Jeff did a knockout job, and even though it was only supposed to be the drop-in, the coin through glass, and that was it. And then he's like, hey, why don't we go ahead and put on maybe like 2 or 3 other things on here to kind of, increase the, the percent, let's give these guys a lot more than just this. I mean, we could have easily sold the coin through glass on its own.
Yeah.
Right. But I felt like, okay, I got a couple of items that I really want to put in here. I wanted something, because this is a knuckle busting thing. A lot of people, if you've seen it, I remember watching the review you and David did on it.
It's incredible.
It looks great. The payoff is well worth the practice, but it takes a shitload of practice. And so I'm like, I need to put a couple things on here that are super, super simple. So if somebody buys this and they can't do this, they still feel like they got some value out of the other stuff. And so that's why I decided to add a couple more items on there. And so that was honestly my only release was the DVD. And then I think about 6 months later, because Penguin had the exclusive on that, or who did have the exclusive? Yeah, Penguin, I think, had the exclusive on it. And Ajar was like, hey, we get a lot of people that are like saying this is only 40 minutes long, can we do something else? So they invited me to do a Penguin Live lecture.
Oh, wow.
I went up in 2011 to Columbus, and I shot that, and I met Sean Dunn. And while we were there filming the Penguin Live, they were like, hey, do you want to put anything else out? So we did like a whole separate, like, third day of just shooting in the studio, of doing downloads. And that's pretty much about it. That was about 10 years ago now. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, if people haven't seen that, they need to check it out, because it's incredible. It really is. Look at that. There you go.
Yeah, so that's it. But yeah, that was the reason I kind of held off. It was more of the timing, and then the fact that having a little bit more of a down payment on a house would help. So, and Jeff, he took good care of me, and he did me good, and then he's off to doing better things now. He's in LA, and he's working his magic out there. But yeah, so that's the reason I put that whole product out. But I got some plans. I got a few things that are cooking up on the back end, and hopefully that'll come out pretty soon. So.
Well, that was my final question. I know you've got to go, so I'm going to ask you one last question. And the last question is, what's next? You alluded to maybe doing some more magic from a creativity point of view. Are there any goals or aspirations? Are there any bucket list items that you haven't hit yet that you'd like to achieve?
Yeah. I think when I leave this planet, the legacy that I want to leave behind is that I helped other magicians attain something they weren't aware they needed, and that has nothing to do with the magic trick. The reason I spend hours and hours on these groups and I post videos and stuff, because I really want to help people see a whole different aspect of the entertainment business. You know, show business, as you know, is 2 words. And 99% of them have excellent magic. I'm not going to knock anybody. There are some shitty ones, but like for the most part, 99% of them have really good magic, but they don't know how to channel that into an income, you know? And so that's really where, if I'm gone one day and people talk about me, I don't want them to talk about a coin through glass. I want somebody to say, you know, I watched 2 videos that Mike posted on these groups, and I listened and I applied them, and now I'm making 3 times as much as I used to. And that was able to get me a home, and that's able to get me a car, and that's able to get me this. And now I'm married and I have a family because I implemented the ideas that he had, you know, and it worked. And, you know, I have him to thank for what I have now, you know. That's to me, I don't need sales from a DVD for magic. That is magic, you know. So is transforming somebody's life, you know. So that's really the goal for me, is to just put the information out there, you know. And I do want to release a couple courses. I'm actually working on a restaurant course right now. So I'm hoping to have that out possibly by the end of the year, if not next year. But that'll be a whole course. I'm also going to try to do a marketing course. I have a group called Marketing Your Magic, and so that's where we don't discuss any magic tricks. We just discuss sales, marketing, overcoming objections, things like that, you know. So that's where I teach a lot of that on, and trying to just build that community, you know. And basically I want people to reach higher, you know. I'm trying to set a new bar, you know, for magicians to go out there and say, you know, you're good enough. You know, if you're not, I can help you get there, you know, and show you little things you can do to tweak your business. So
that's amazing. And we're going to end this now, but where can people reach out to you? You mentioned the Facebook group, Marketing My Magic, which is great. Yeah. And there's a lot of information goes in there. You're regularly doing lives and so on and so forth. But if people want to speak to you about design work for their business, increasing the amount of work they do, your restaurant tracking system, anything like that, how can people reach out to you, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook, so just look up Michael Eaton. I think it's like at EatonMagic.com or at Eaton Magic, EatonMagic. But I would honestly strongly suggest, and I'm not trying to be a dick to anybody. I'm not really talking to many magicians. I've got a family. I've got 2 dogs, you know. So my time, I'm committed to here, you know. Like, this is where my haven's at. So, but yeah, if you want to like connect with me through Facebook, or yeah, if you're a working pro, or you're looking to become a working pro and you want some tips, I would strongly suggest that you just join the group and comment. You know, I try to make it as open as possible and ask away any questions. You know, I've got, I think, around 800 members right now in there, which could probably be doing better. But for the most part, it's a hive mind. You know, it's people that have had experience. You know, that they're continuously looking for growth, personal growth, or, you know, revenue growth. And yeah, so I would encourage anybody that's wanting to connect with me just to kind of join that. I look at every membership request. I look at the questions that I ask, and there's a couple questions in there that I ask. If you're going to join, make sure you answer the questions, because people that don't answer the questions, I don't even bother approving their membership. Because if they can't take the time to tell me about what their goals are, you know, nothing I say to them is going to help. So.
Not at all. Not at all. Michael, this has been an incredible interview. Thank you so much. You are one of a kind. You really are, my friend. Thank you so much. And you know what? The goal, helping magicians all over the world, it's something that I can see that you've done, you continue to go, and you're one of the nicest guys in magic. So thank you for finding time to do this interview. I really appreciate it. And keep posting the videos, because honestly, I have a blast watching them, man. It's so good to see somebody so good at what they do it at such a high level. So Michael, one more time, thank you so much.
You are so welcome, Craig, man. I love you, buddy. Take care, okay?
Take care. Guys, make sure that you leave a comment down below so Michael can see it. And I'll be back again very soon with another video. Thanks very much for watching.
See ya.